Hi, everyone. Welcome to Live Healthy Now. You know, in my line of work as a registered dietitian, these days, more and more, I'm seeing more patients with thyroid disease. And our guest today is Stephanie Bergsma, a chef, an author, so many other wonderful things, has successfully reversed her thyroid disease. And we're going to be talking about that today. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, well, tell us a little bit about your background, first of all, before we jump into the thyroid stuff. I know as a chef, I know that when you were a little girl, you were watching cooking shows, and so now look at you, all kinds of good things. But take us through your journey there.
Well, when I grew up, I really was interested in cooking shows, and I just was always helping my mom in the kitchen. And so food has always been something that I've enjoyed playing with and doing different things with. So it's always been fun, and even now the job that I have, I'm managing a kitchen for a high school of 78 students, and it's an entirely plant-based school, which is really quite the experience. So it's quite nice to be able to be there and have this journey that I've been on taken me to where I am now.
So, going back to when you were a young girl, 12 years old, watching cooking shows, to the time now where you're actually a chef yourself and doing all these things. Let's talk about that journey.
Well, I was 12 years old, which, first of all, that's very rare
Very
because to
young.
have a child at that age present with these symptoms, fortunately, my mom was trained as a nurse and she was able to recognize that there's something wrong. Plus, she also was hypothyroid herself.
Okay.
So at 12 years old, my mom noticed that I had a goiter, which is just an enlarged thyroid gland. So she took me into the hospital and I had my blood tested, and they found out, sure enough, my thyroid levels were off, plus my cholesterol was high too, which is an indicator that your thyroid is really struggling.
Okay. And were you feeling anything like sluggish, or was it manifesting in any other way, or?
Yeah, I mean, at that time in a young girl's life, there's so many things that are going on.
Yes.
But there was some hormonal issues that were there. I was tired, my skin was dry all the time, my hair was falling out, things like that. So just some typical thyroid symptoms. But at 12 years old and everything going on, you just kind of wonder what exactly is happening.
Right.
And then that diagnosis came. And it wasn't really a shock because my mom has the same thing,
Okay.
and also her grandmother had the same thing as well.
My.
So it's very common, especially among women. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with a thyroid problem at some point in their life. So it's common, and then it's also considered a hereditary disease as well.
Very interesting. And so, how did they treat that when you were 12 years old?
They started me on medication. It was levothyroxine was what I took. And usually what happens is you get tested, they put you on a dose, they test you again after a couple months just to see how that dose is affecting you, if it's improving you or not. And if you need to go on more, they up your dose. So I was on a range from between 150 micrograms up to 300 micrograms, depending over the last 20 years, because I was on medication for 20 years. So that's, it started off, I forget what number I actually started with, but it really fluctuates, and you're always having to get your blood tested.
So now that's interesting because doctors will say once you're on that type of medication, you're on it for life.
It's true.
But you're not on it anymore.
I'm not.
So let's talk about that exciting bit of it.
Well, I was increasing in my knowledge on natural health, and I've always been interested in natural health, even when I was young, because I had so many other health problems, and this was during a time when things like this just were not prevalent, where doctors really knew what was going on with food allergies and different things like this. And so I ended up doing a lot of research myself, which really gave me a keen interest in natural health. And so one day I had learned about a gentleman who did a lot of natural treatments, and I ordered his books, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to look and see what type of treatment there is, if there is even one for thyroid disease, because surely there's nothing, because it's a hereditary condition And but sure enough, there was one, and I thought, okay, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I knew all of the negative side effects that came with the thyroid medication, and I didn't want to have those. Things like increased risk of breast cancer, increased risk of osteoporosis, just a whole lot of things.
Right. Were you experiencing any of the side effects
I
already?
hadn't yet. I hadn't yet, but it was your numbers just fluctuate all the time on your lab tests. You're always having to be a slave to this lab test, your
Right.
medication. It even says on your medication bottle, if you don't take this for 2 or 3 days, I think, then you need to call your doctor. Like, it's a huge deal
Oh my.
to miss 1 or 2 doses. So it was something that I had to take everywhere with me, and I just didn't want to be like that if I could avoid it. So I did the program that was outlined in this book, and it took a lot of dedication, but I learned a lot of things through it, different things that suppress your thyroid. It's not just a simple eat better program. It is, exercise is so key to that. It stimulates your thyroid gland, different minerals and elements and things like this that we need to have in our diet, and then also things that suppress our thyroid, that cause our thyroid just to really not function properly. So I learned a lot, and it just really helped me to know how to live every day, and then how to help other people with their thyroid problems as well. When you hear the word thyroid disease, people automatically think, oh, iodine. Iodine and thyroid go together.
Right.
But there's so much more than just iodine, and often people will self-treat their thyroid problems with just strictly iodine, but it doesn't work that way. And then they find, oh, I'm not feeling better, I'm just going to go back to my medication, or I'm going to just, maybe that's not my problem at all. But there's just a lot more to the picture than just iodine in your thyroid.
Absolutely. And you know, a few weeks ago, actually, a patient said to me, I really don't want to be on these pills anymore. And, you know, I mentioned there are natural things you can do. So tell us, what are a few specific things? Like you mentioned exercise. Is that every day, or?
Yeah,
what is-
exercise is great, and aerobic exercise, not just going for a casual walk around the block. It needs to be something where you're really feeling, just you're getting your blood pumping.
Great,
And
so
of course, you know,
vigorous.
you want to talk to your doctor before you do anything like that, because
True.
Sometimes that's just not in your physical capabilities. A lot of times people who have thyroid problems are very sluggish. They have no energy whatsoever. Now, I was dealing with a low thyroid, and so my book deals mostly with hypothyroid conditions. I talk a little bit about hyperthyroid, but the things that I mostly focus on is for low or underactive thyroid, which is the
right.
more common of the
Yes.
two anyways. But some other things that are helpful are just the way you eat. That is helpful for sure. There's things called goitrogens, which are in several different types of foods, and they vary in their amounts. But I found that I had to eliminate goitrogens from my diet in order to gain my thyroid health back.
And so what are some of the foods that have these goitrogens? I know some people are going to be a little surprised.
Yes, a lot. The main ones, I mean, you can look online and you'll find every different website telling you different things, but the most common ones that have the highest concentration are soy products, especially cooked soy products. Not that you eat uncooked soy too much, but soy, cruciferous vegetables, so your brassica family, so things like kale, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, those things are especially high in goitrogens. Now, when you cook these things, the goitrogenic substances do go down, and they don't affect you quite so much. But they're still there.
Yes.
So if you are dealing with a thyroid condition, depending on the severity of it, you will want to eliminate those completely for a while until you're, feeling better.
Right. So you talked about tofu. A lot of people eat tofu. Are you talking about just the regular tofu, or the products, the end results, those deli meats and stuff, or
Yeah.
all tofu?
Yeah, any type of thing like that. Anything with soy in it is important to avoid because it just really does suppress your thyroid. Soy
Okay.
milk, tofu, even soy sauce and things like that have small amounts of soy in it. Like if you're doing margarine that has just a little bit like an earth balance or something like that,
Right.
then you want to have, just try to get the soy free if possible. And it's much better that way. The same with with millet, if you cook millet as well, it increases the goitrogenic compounds in there too. So
That's good to know.
those are the only two things that increase when you cook them. The rest of the goitrogenic foods decrease when you cook them. Corn is another big one.
Oh my.
That's those, I avoid those completely even still now.
Okay.
The cruciferous I still eat a little bit here and there, but I tend to eat more things instead of those ones.
Right, and there's a whole ton of
Oh,
other
yeah.
things to eat, so
For
those
sure.
few things, it doesn't really matter so much.
Yes.
What else can you tell us?
Well, there's some things that we may not be aware of that will inhibit our thyroid. And so while we think that iodine is helpful, which it is, you also need to have some other minerals in there as well. So you need L-tyrosine, because what your thyroid does is it absorbs iodine, and then together with L-tyrosine, which is an amino acid, it combines iodine and L-tyrosine together to make the thyroid hormones T3 and T4. So if you don't have both of them, you don't have the complete puzzle. So you cannot effectively make the thyroid hormones without the L-tyrosine, and most thyroid education that's out there, they miss that part of it. They don't talk about the L-tyrosine because they say, well, you need to medicate, because that is mostly what people think they have to do.
Exactly.
And so then there's also selenium and zinc and copper. Those are three important minerals as well. And you can get a lot of those in foods.
Absolutely. Selenium, Brazil nuts,
Yeah,
very
exactly.
easily. Yeah, okay.
But one of the other things that I found was very interesting was the substances that are suppressing our thyroid that we're eating or consuming in other ways, absorbing in our bodies every single day. And those are things that are on the same part of the periodic table as iodine. And those are things like chlorine or fluoride or
Right.
fluorine and bromine.
Okay,
So those three things they will compete with your iodine receptors in your thyroid, and they will be absorbed instead of iodine if there's more of that than iodine in your body.
so fluoridated water.
Exactly. And chlorine in the water as well.
right.
Bromine.
Yeah.
Bromine's a common ingredient in a lot of the sports drinks that are citrus flavored.
Oh my.
So things like that, or even soft drinks that are citrus flavored, because it's used to suspend the citrus flavor in these soft drinks. And so you're getting this bromine, or brominated vegetable oil is what it's called on the label.
Okay.
And so those things are going to be suppressing your thyroid gland, and these are just common everyday things that you're ingesting, and you don't really realize the effect that they're having.
Isn't that incredible? The power of food
Yes.
on our bodies. And, you know, a lot of times people will say, oh, we don't know what really causes these things. But by and large, it's the food that we're eating, but it's also the food that we're eating that can help to reverse
That's right.
and cure these things. So you successfully reversed it. How long did that take?
It took me about 8 months.
Not long.
No.
Compared to 20 years
Yes.
that you were. Wow.
But it's something that I'm dealing with every day as well.
Okay.
Where I have to make sure I get enough exercise, enough sleep, water, just all these things. Just, it's important to have a whole approach to it.
Right.
And it's not just avoiding goitrogenic foods or things like that. You need to have a whole approach to it. But I haven't been on any medication for 4 years now.
Amazing.
So yeah,
Fabulous.
so it's really nice to not have to take that pill every day.
Right.
But it's still a journey because it is something that is a weak organ in my body. So I just need to really support it any way that I can. So I'm not quite as particular with the foods that I eat, like avoiding them as far as like tofu or some cruciferous vegetables. I still will eat them occasionally,
Okay.
but not every day, certainly.
Right.
Because I do honestly feel a difference when I do eat those things. So I try to avoid them, but here and there I do have stuff still.
Well, thank you so much for all of this great information about thyroid disease and how to cure it naturally. It can be cured. Be encouraged. But we're going to go into the kitchen now and cook up something really delicious from one of your cookbooks that supports thyroid
Yes.
function.
That's right.
Can't wait.
Yes.